I am 34 years old and a bachelor, the owner of Starhorn Farm, the largest holding in the borderlands of Thornvale. The farm stretches across hundreds of acres of rich pasture, dotted with a great herd of Stonehorn cattle, war-bred horses that can carry a fully armored rider without complaint, granaries heavy with grain, and a main house built like a small fortress to withstand the harsh winds that sweep down from the northern ridges. Everything a man could want lies within my fences, everything except warmth. I live alone in that great house. The servants bow when they see me and speak only when spoken to. They fear me, or perhaps they fear the silence that clings to me like frost. I do not blame them. I have never been an easy man to know. Years ago I sent for a bride through the mail coach service that runs between the distant towns. She arrived with sweet letters and a smile that could melt snow. She left 3 months later with most of my gold and every promise she had ever made. After that, I swore I would never again let anyone close enough to see what I truly owned. Land, cattle, horses, none of it mattered if the person who stood beside me only wanted what my name could buy. Still, the house grew colder with every passing winter. The hearth fires never quite reached the corners of the rooms. The long table in the hall felt too wide for one man. So against every instinct that had kept me safe, I wrote another letter. I sent it to towns far enough away that my name would not carry the weight of rumor. I kept the words short and plain. I am a man of few words. I have a house and land. I seek a true companion, nothing more. No flowery promises, no lies about love at first sight, only honesty, or at least what I thought was honesty. The answer came from a woman named Mira Thorneye. Her letter was even shorter than mine. She wrote that she could cook, that she knew herbs and the mending of wounds, that she was hard-working and wanted nothing more than a decent roof and honest work. She did not ask about gold or title. She did not speak of beauty or romance. She simply said she was tired of being seen as useless by her own clan because she preferred healing to fighting. Something in those plain lines made me decide to meet her. I planned to ride to Thornfield Station myself. I saddled my strongest horse at dawn and set out through the narrow pass known as Horseback Ridge. The trail was treacherous even on the best of days, steep walls of rock on one side, a sheer drop on the other. I had ridden it 100 times. I never expected the mountain to betray me. Halfway through the pass, a low rumble shook the air. Before I could spur the horse forward, the entire slope above me gave way. Boulders the size of wagons crashed down in a roar of dust and stone. My horse screamed and reared. I was thrown hard. Pain exploded through my left leg as a massive rock pinned it against the ground. My head struck the cliff wall. Blood poured into my eyes, warm and sticky. I tried to push the stone away, but my arms had no strength left. The world spun. I remember thinking, with strange calm, that if no one passed this way soon, I would die here beneath the sky I had known all my life. At that same moment, Mira stood alone on the wooden platform of Thornfield Station, clutching my letter in her green fist. The coach driver had already left. She had no money for an inn, and no wish to return to the clan that had called her a burden. The station master told her Starhorn Farm lay 10 miles west through the hills. She tightened the straps of her small pack, adjusted the herbs and bandages she always carried, and began to walk. She did not know the shortcut through Horseback Ridge was dangerous. She did not know the man lying crushed under stone was the very one who had promised to meet her. She only knew she had nowhere else to go. The sun was sinking when she saw my horse standing riderless beside the trail, saddle smeared with blood. Mira followed the drag marks in the dirt. She found my hand protruding from beneath the rock, fingers still twitching. Without hesitation, she dropped her pack, braced her broad shoulders against the stone, and pushed. The rock did not move. She found a sturdy branch, wedged it beneath the edge, and threw her weight down again and again. Sweat poured down her green skin. Her arms trembled. Still she pushed. After what felt like an eternity, the stone finally shifted enough for her to drag my leg free. She knelt beside me, tipped water from her canteen between my cracked lips. I managed only a few broken words. Wooden house. By the stream. Then darkness took me completely. That night, Mira hauled me across the saddle like a sack of grain and guided the frightened horse along the darkening trail. She brought me to the old hunter's cabin beside the stream, the one no one had used for years. Inside, she built a fire, tore strips from her own skirt to bandage my wounds, and brewed a strong tea from the dried herbs she carried. She sat beside me through the long hours, wiping blood from my face and checking that my breathing did not falter. She had no idea I was Kadric Varen, master of Starhorn Farm. And when I finally drifted back toward consciousness in the gray light before dawn, I made my second mistake. I did not tell her my real name. I woke to the smell of wood smoke and wet stone. My head throbbed like someone had split it open with an axe, and my left leg burned as though the rock still pinned it. For a long moment I could not remember where I was or how I had come to be there. Then the memories returned in pieces, the roar of the landslide, the horse's scream, the crushing weight of stone. I opened my eyes. The cabin was small and dim, little more than 4 rough walls and a thatched roof that leaked in several places. Rain drummed steadily outside. A low fire crackled in the hearth, throwing shaky light across the dirt floor. And there, slumped against the wall beside the hearth, was the orc woman, Mira. Her green skin was streaked with dirt and dried blood, my blood. Her hands, large and calloused, lay open in her lap, the knuckles scraped raw from shifting rock. Her dark hair had come loose from its braid and clung to her face in damp strands. She was asleep, chin resting on her chest, breathing slow and heavy. On the rough table beside her lay the remains of her supplies, a few crumbs of hard bread, 2 withered apple slices, and a small pouch of dried herbs. I understood at once that she had used nearly everything she carried to keep me alive. I tried to sit up. Pain flared through my leg and I hissed between my teeth. The sound woke her. Mira's yellow eyes snapped open sharp and alert even in exhaustion. She pushed herself upright, wincing as she did so, and moved to my side. "You are awake," she said. Her voice was low, rough from disuse, but steady. "Good. The fever broke 2 hours ago." She reached for a wooden cup, dipped it into a pot of water warming by the fire, and brought it to my lips. I drank. The water tasted of smoke and mountain herbs. When I had finished, she set the cup aside and studied me for a moment. "What is your name?" she asked. The lie came easily, born of years of distrust. "Aaron," I said. "Just Aaron. I work at Starhorn Farm." She nodded once, accepting it without question. "I am Mira Thorneye. I came to Thornvale to meet a man named Kadric Varen. He sent for me through the mail service." She gave a small, tired shrug. "He never came to the station. I waited until the last coach left, then started walking." Hearing my own name on her lips felt like a stone dropped into my stomach. I kept my face still. "I'm sorry you had to walk alone." Mira looked away, toward the rain streaking the single window. "I have walked farther. My clan. They decided I was more useful as a burden than a warrior. I do not fight well, but I can cook. I can mend wounds. I can keep a hearth burning. That was all I offered in my letter." She smiled faintly, though there was no joy in it. "I thought a man who lived alone on a large farm might need those things." I said nothing. The shame sat thick in my throat. She stood, moving carefully, and brought the last of the bread and the 2 apple slices. She broke the bread in half and offered me the larger piece. "Eat," she said. "You need it more," I answered. "You carried me half the night." Mira shook her head. "You were crushed under stone. Your body needs strength to heal. I am only tired." She pressed the bread into my hand. "Besides, I still have the apples." We ate in silence. The bread was dry and hard, but it tasted better than anything I had eaten in years. When we finished, she checked the bandage on my leg, her touch firm but gentle. She cleaned the wound again, applied fresh herbs from her dwindling supply, and wrapped it with another strip torn from her skirt. Her hands never trembled. For the next 3 days, the rain kept us inside the little cabin. Mira never rested for long. She left only to fetch water from the stream or search the wet woods for more herbs. She kept the fire going through the coldest hours of the night. She changed my bandages twice a day, fed me the last of her food without complaint, and spoke little unless I asked her something. When I did ask, she answered simply and truthfully. She told me about her clan in the northern hills, how they valued strength above all else and had no patience for those who chose healing over battle. She told me about the long journey south, the suspicious glances from human travelers, the nights she had slept under hedges because no inn would take an orc. She never once spoke with bitterness, only weariness. Each time she moved, I noticed new details. The way her shoulders carried the weight of her pack without protest, the quiet competence in every small task, the way she hummed an unfamiliar melody while stirring the weak broth she made from wild roots. She treated me like a stranger who needed help. Nothing more. She did not know I owned the largest farm in the borderlands. She did not know I was the man who had failed to meet her at the station. And because I had given her the name Aaron, she never suspected. On the third night, the rain grew heavier. Water dripped through the roof in half a dozen places. I lay on the narrow cot she had made for me, listening to the leaks and to Mira's steady breathing as she sat watch by the fire. My leg still ached, but the fever was gone. I knew we could not stay here much longer. In the morning, I would tell her I could ride. I would take her to Starhorn Farm and show her the place she had traveled so far to reach. But I would still be Aaron when we arrived. I was not ready to be Kaedric Varen again. Not yet. Outside, thunder rolled across the dark hills. Inside, the fire crackled, and Mira's shadow moved quietly across the wall as she added another small branch to keep the flames alive. I closed my eyes and let the sound of the rain carry me back toward sleep, wondering how long I could keep pretending to be someone smaller than I was. The morning light was pale and thin when we left the cabin. My legs still throbbed with every heartbeat, but the swelling had gone down enough that I could sit a horse if I clenched my teeth hard enough. Mira helped me into the saddle first, then swung up in front of me so I could wrap one arm around her waist for balance. She smelled of wood smoke, wet earth, and the faint green bitterness of the herbs she had used on my wounds. Neither of us spoke much. The rain had stopped, but the trail was slick with mud and loose stone. She still believed I was Aaron, a simple hired hand who knew the way back to Starhorn Farm. I let her believe it. The lie had grown roots overnight, and I was too much of a coward to tear them out. We rode slowly out of the narrow pass. The walls of rock fell away on either side, and the land opened like a sigh. Endless green pasture rolled toward the horizon, divided by long stone fences that glinted wet in the early sun. Herds of Stonehorn cattle moved across the slopes like slow, dark rivers. In the distance, the main house rose on its low hill, solid timber and gray stone, chimneys smoking, the red tile roof catching the first true light of day. It looked exactly like what it was, the largest holding in Thornvale built to last generations. Mira's back stiffened against my chest. She stared at the vastness spreading before us. "That is Starhorn Farm?" she asked quietly. Before I could answer, the sound of hooves pounded up the trail behind us. One of my riders, young Thomas, came galloping hard, cloak flapping. He reined in sharply when he saw us, eyes wide with relief and shock. "Master Varen!" he shouted, sliding from the saddle and dropping to one knee in the mud. "We've been searching 3 days straight. The whole farm's been turned upside down. Thank the gods you're alive." The name hung in the air between us like a blade. Mira went completely still. Her fingers tightened on the reins until the leather creaked. Slowly she turned her head just enough to look back at me. Those yellow eyes, usually calm and steady, were wide with disbelief. "Master Varen?" she repeated, voice low and dangerous. I met her gaze and felt every second of my deception crash down on me. "My name is Kaedric Varen," I said. The words tasted like ash. "I am the owner of Starhorn Farm." For a long moment she said nothing. Then she swung her leg over the horse's neck and dropped to the ground, landing lightly despite her exhaustion. She stood there in the middle of the trail, fists clenched at her sides, staring at me as though I had struck her. "You knew," she said. "From the moment you woke up, you knew who I was. You heard me say your name, and you still told me you were Aaron. You let me carry you. You let me tear my clothes for bandages. You let me give you the last of my food while I thought you were just another hired man." I dismounted awkwardly, favoring my bad leg. Pain flared hot up my thigh, but it was nothing compared to the look on her face. "I was afraid," I said. The excuse sounded weak even to me. "Years ago, another woman answered a letter like yours. She took what she wanted and disappeared. After that, I stopped trusting anyone who came looking for Kaedric Varen. I wanted to know who you really were before you knew what I owned." Mira's laugh was short and bitter. "So you tested me, like a horse at market. You let me believe I was helping a stranger while I was actually saving the man who had promised to meet me at the station and never came." She turned away, shoulders rigid. The morning wind tugged at her dark hair. Around us, the cattle lowed softly, unaware of the small storm happening on the trail. "I did not ask for your wealth," she said without looking back. "I did not ask for your name. I only asked for a decent roof and honest work. You gave me a lie instead." I had no answer that would not sound like another excuse. So I stayed silent and let her words land. When we reached the gates of the main yard, the servants came running. They stared at Mira with open curiosity and at me with relief. I gave quick orders for hot water, clean bandages, and food. Then I led Mira toward the main house. I had already told the housekeeper to prepare the best guest room: wide bed, fresh linens, a window looking over the garden, a copper tub filled with hot water. Mira stopped at the bottom of the wide stone steps. "No," she said. I blinked. "The room is ready. You can rest properly." "I will stay in the small room beside the medicine shed," she cut in. Her voice was quiet but final. "I have slept in worse places. I do not need your fine bed or your fine view. Not yet." She did not wait for permission. She turned and walked toward the low stone building at the edge of the yard where we kept the healing supplies and drying herbs. The door creaked as she pushed it open and stepped inside without another word. I stood on the wide porch of the main house long after the sun had climbed higher. Servants moved around me, whispering. My leg ached. My chest ached worse. Through the small window of the medicine shed, I could see the faint glow of a lantern she had lit. She had not left. She had not forgiven me either. For the first time in many years, I understood something clearly. All the land, all the cattle, all the stone and timber of Starhorn Farm could not buy back one honest moment I had thrown away. If Mira stayed, it would not be because of anything I owned. It would be in spite of it. I turned and went inside alone, the great empty house echoing around me. Despite her anger, Mira did not sit idle in the small room beside the medicine shed. The very next morning, I saw her moving through the yards with quiet purpose, her green hands checking water troughs and examining the Stonehorn cattle with the same steady care she had shown when tending my wounds. She still would not speak to me beyond what was necessary, but she worked. She found the problem on the third day. Several cows in the western pasture had begun to cough and stagger. Their eyes were dull, their coats rough. Mira knelt beside one of the younger calves, fingers pressing along its neck and flanks. When she stood, her face was grim. "The western trough is poisoned," she said to no one in particular. "Reo jock. It grows in still water after heavy rain. If we do not clean every trough and burn the bad hay, the whole herd will be down within a week." Doran, the head stockman, folded his arms and looked at her with open disbelief. "A mail-order bride, who barely knows the land, thinks she can diagnose my cattle. We've had wet springs before. This is nothing new." Mira did not raise her voice. She simply pointed to the green scum clinging to the inside of the trough and the white film on the calves' tongues. "I have seen this in the northern hills. 3 days more, and the fever will spread to the milk cows and the breeding bulls. You will lose half the herd before winter." Doran turned to me, waiting for me to dismiss her. For once I did not hesitate. "Do exactly as she says," I told him. My voice carried across the yard so every man could hear. "Replace the water in every trough, burn the moldy hay, open the ventilation in the barns, and bring Mira whatever herbs or supplies she asks for." Doran's jaw tightened, but he gave a stiff nod. "As you command, Master Varen." Mira worked without rest. She organized the men into teams, showed them how to scrub the troughs with lye and rinse them clean, how to spot the first signs of fever in the younger animals. She brewed bitter medicines from the last of her own dried herbs and stayed up through the night dosing the weakest calves by hand. When the supply ran low, she walked the pastures at dawn, gathering fresh plants I had never noticed before. Her hands were never still. I watched her from a distance at first, my bad leg propped on a stool on the porch. Then I limped down to the barns and did what I could, carrying buckets, holding lanterns, repeating her instructions to the men who still muttered behind her back. For 3 days, the yard smelled of smoke and medicine and wet hides. The calves stopped eating. Some could not stand. Mira moved among them like a shadow, never raising her voice, never showing exhaustion even when her eyes were ringed with dark circles. On the 4th morning, the first calf stood on shaky legs and took a mouthful of fresh hay. By evening, 3 more were eating. The coughing eased. The herd began to settle. Doran found me at the fence line that night. He rubbed the back of his neck, uncomfortable. "She saved them," he admitted. "If we had waited another day, I owe her an apology." "You can tell her yourself," I said. He did. The next afternoon, in front of the men, Doran took off his hat and spoke to Mira directly. "You knew what you were doing. The herd owes you its life. I was wrong to doubt you." Mira only nodded once, then went back to checking the water troughs. That evening, I found her alone in the medicine shed, grinding dried leaves under a small lamp. I carried the original letter she had sent me, the one I had kept in the drawer of my desk for months. I set it on the table between us. "I have read this letter many times," I said, "but I never truly understood it until now. You did not come here for wealth or land. You came for a decent roof and honest work. I should have met you at the station as I promised. Instead, I hid behind a false name and tested you like you were something to be measured. I was wrong, deeply wrong." Mira looked at the letter but did not touch it. The silence stretched. "I do not want you to stay because you feel you owe me," I continued. "I do not want you to stay because the farm needs your skill. If you choose to leave tomorrow, I will give you a horse, supplies, and enough coin to reach any town you wish. But if you stay, every truth belongs to you. No more tests, no more lies. Only what is real." She was quiet for a long time. The pestle in her hand had stopped moving. "I am still angry," she said at last, "but anger does not feed cattle or mend broken legs." She met my eyes. "I will stay a while longer, not for the farm, not for the name Varen, for the man who once lay under a rock and still tried to protect his horse even while bleeding. I want to see if that man is still here." From that day we began working side by side. She taught me the names and uses of the wild herbs that grew on the edges of the pastures. I taught her how to read the farm ledgers, how the water channels ran, how the breeding lines of the Stonehorn cattle were recorded. We spoke little at first, but the silence slowly filled with small, careful words. Trust did not return quickly. It grew the way new grass grows after a hard winter, slow, uncertain, but green, where it had once been bare. And for the first time in years, the great house did not feel quite so empty. The rumors reached the town of Thornvale before the week was out. They traveled faster than any horse. The orc woman who had answered a mail-order letter had somehow bewitched the master of Starhorn Farm. Or worse, the master had taken in a savage who would steal everything he owned. Selena Mar arrived on the 4th day, riding in a fine carriage with the same smile she had worn years ago when she left me poorer by half my gold. She stood before the town council in the meeting hall and spoke with honeyed poison. "She is an innocent bride," Selene declared, voice carrying to every ear. "An orc who crossed half the continent for a rich man's land. She saw the name Varen and came running. Mark my words, she will take what she wants and vanish like the last one did." The room murmured, eyes turned toward Mira, who stood at the back in her plain working clothes, hands still stained with the green of healing herbs. I stepped forward to speak, but Mira raised her hand. She walked to the front of the hall without hurry and faced them all. "I did not know who Kaedric Varen was when I found him," she said, voice clear and steady. "I found a man pinned beneath a rock, bleeding, half dead. I gave him the last of my water. I gave him the last of my bread. I tore my own skirt to bind his wounds. I did these things because he was a stranger who needed help, not because he owned the largest farm in Thornvale. If I had come for gold, I would have asked where the gold was before I asked whether his leg was still bleeding." She turned her yellow eyes on Selene. "People who chase wealth ask about treasure first. I asked about a man's life. That is the difference between us." The hall fell silent. Selene's smile faltered. No one spoke against Mira after that. I stepped beside her. My legs still ached, but I stood straight. "Mira Thorneye does not need to prove her worth to this council," I said. "She has already proved it to me. If she chooses to stay, every word she speaks on this farm will carry the same weight as my own. If she chooses to leave, I will give her whatever she needs to go anywhere she wishes. The choice is hers alone." I did not look at the council. I looked only at Mira. That night the wind carried the scent of pine and river water across the pastures. I walked slowly to the old hunter's cabin beside the stream, the same cabin where she had dragged me half dead and tended me without knowing my name. The door stood open. A small fire burned inside. Mira waited on the threshold, the lantern light catching the edges of her tusks and the quiet strength in her shoulders. She spoke first. "I have thought long about this place," she said, "about the great house, the herds, the name Varen that everyone bows to. I do not love any of those things." My heart tightened, but I stayed silent and let her finish. "I do not love the master of Starhorn Farm," she continued. "I love the man who lay under a rock and still tried to calm his frightened horse. I love the man who woke in pain and still chose to share the last of my bread with me. I love the man who was wrong, who lied out of fear, and who has spent every day since trying to make it right." She took one step closer. If that man still wants to begin again, truly begin, then I will stay. I felt the weight of every mistake I had made settle on my shoulders and then, strangely, lift. I lowered myself to one knee on the cabin floor right there where she had once sat, watch over me through the long nights. "Mira Thorneye," I said, "when I first wrote that letter, I was looking for someone to fill an empty house. I am not looking for that anymore. I am asking you to build a life with me, one honest day at a time. No more tests, no more hidden names, only the truth. Every morning and every night, if you will have me, I am yours." She looked down at me for a long moment. Then she reached out and placed her large green hand over mine. "I will stay," she said simply. "Not for the farm, not for the cattle, or the gold, or the name. I will stay for the man I found bleeding beside the trail. I will stay for Aaron and for Kadrick and for whoever you choose to be each day after this." I rose and took both her hands. The fire crackled softly behind us. Outside, the stream whispered the same song it had sung the night she saved my life. The story began when an orc girl sent for by mail was forgotten at a lonely station. She walked through dangerous hills, found a dying stranger beneath a rock, and gave him the last of her bread without knowing he owned half the borderlands. I tested her with silence and a false name. She answered with kindness and truth. In the end, Mira did not stay for Starhorn Farm. She stayed for the man she had pulled from under the stones, the man who finally learned that trust cannot be measured like grain or weighed like gold. It can only be given freely and honestly, one true day at a time. And that was enough.